So I want to talk to you today about why professionals are struggling during their career transition, moving from one position into another. So one thing that I've noticed after years of career coaching and recruitment is that a lot of experienced professionals, they're not struggling because they lack the experience. This battle is not knowing how to reposition the experience to where they want to go next. So some of the things that are missing is they're not able to communicate transferable skills. That's another big issue. And then lastly, they're focusing on responsibilities instead of accomplishments. Okay, so I'm going to get into this a little deeper. What I see happening a lot is that a lot of times people are using the same resume that they've had for 10, 15 years, or even 5 years for every single application instead of repositioning their experience towards a specific role for that specific job. Okay, the resume is a reflection of what they did rather than the value that they're bringing to the table. This is another issue that I've seen with some of my clients. Okay. They're literally not recognizing their skills enough. Okay. And then another issue is not being able to translate your previous work experience into the lingo, the language, and the skills and the priorities of the new position or the new industry that you want to go into. It's very important that you speak the same language, okay? And another thing that happens is that they're highlighting responsibilities instead of accomplishments. Okay, now what this means is, when you have your bulleted points or your profile summary, what a recruiter wants to see is what you did for the company, how you helped them, and what the end result was. So these are what we call quantifiable statements. So you need to make sure that you've got those in your resume, okay? Now, you might have the right experience, but the recruiter just can't see it from looking at your resume. They can't see the connection between your background and the position that you want to go to if you're not communicating that properly on your resume. And then lastly, they're underestimating their transferable skills because they're too focused on job titles instead of what they're capable of doing. Now, this is something that I've seen a lot with my clients, okay? And it's an easy trap to fall into because you get so used to doing what you're doing for years and years that your automatic default goes to what you did as opposed to how you helped the company, okay? Now, the reason why all of these things become a challenge is because in the background, the professional or the job seeker is assuming that their experience is speaking for itself. A lot of professionals think that employers can automatically see their value just by their titles, okay? But hiring managers are looking for specific things to be communicated in the resume because they're literally screening the resume for that information. And another thing that happens is that they're too focused on their past roles as opposed to where they want to go. So, what I see a lot is on resumes, they're describing what they did in their previous role, but they're not showing how those skills can be applied to the position that they're applying to now. Okay. Another issue is that they're having problems seeing their own transferable skills. Now, this is where I suggest that you start jotting down, things that you've done and literally see how those skills can be applied to the new position. Okay. You might also need to have a couple of different versions of your resume. Okay. Even the LinkedIn profile has changed completely from what it was years ago. Because a lot of recruiters are on LinkedIn scouring through, different LinkedIn profiles to see if they can find a match to the position that they're trying to fill. And even hiring practices have changed. Employers' expectations have changed. Okay, so you might have seen my video about how a recruiter is scanning your resume for about 10 seconds to start before deciding if they want to keep reading. And unfortunately, that is kind of true. So this is why it's so important that you're staying updated in the versions of the resume that you're putting out there. And lastly, you're competing with other candidates out there who actually know how to present themselves. These are people that have identified their transferable skills and they know how to speak about their previous experience in a way that it applies to this particular job that they're going on an interview for. Okay. So the good news is that you don't have to start over, okay? It's just learning how to translate your experience to employers so that they can see the value that you're bringing to the table. So, what can you do instead of just listing your experience? So, you need to learn how to translate those past experiences into a language for the targeted role. Start with the targeted role and identify the skills, keywords, and qualifications that the employer is looking for. Make sure you're putting those in your documents, okay? Customize your resume. We need to make sure we're highlighting the skills, accomplishments, and the results that matter for that specific job. Look at your past experiences and pick the ones that demonstrate these specific skills. Okay. Make sure that you're using quantifiable statements instead of task focused statements. Okay. You might have to rewrite the bullet points to focus on the outcomes, the impact that you made for that company, as well as any achievements that you have made. Okay. Now, we also need you to make sure that you're identifying your transferable skills clearly, okay? And explain how they apply to your new role. This is so important when you're doing interviews, okay? A lot of people botch this process because, yes, they have everything on their resume, but when they get into the interview, they don't know how to communicate that transferable skill into something that the company can use because it's applied to the position, okay? Now, finally, we really need to make sure that you're creating a story, a career story that talks about not just where you've been, but why you're the right fit for where you're going. Okay? That is crucial. You have to practice it. Okay? Make sure you practice it over and over and over again so that you're comfortable speaking about it. Do not memorize it, but just make sure that you know how to talk about your career in a way that bridges your experience that you're bringing to the table with the new position. Okay. So the key takeaway is that your experience has a lot of value. Okay. But you need to know how to communicate it in a way that connects to your next job. All right. I want you to ask yourself, are you presenting yourself based on where you've been or where you're going next? Okay. Because sometimes, like I said, the challenge isn't the lack of experience. A lot of time it's how that experience is being position. Okay, so the word for this video is positioning. All right, I hope this video has helped you out a lot. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, follow, or comment below if you have any questions for me. And remember, the energy that you're putting out has a way of coming back to you. So make sure you're keeping it positive.